Most people are slaves, not to chains, but to their own opinions. The marketplace is noisier now than it has ever been, not a forum of ideas, but a battlefield of egos. A scroll through glowing screens opens doors not to peace, but to storms of comparison, distraction, and ceaseless urgency. People rush, argue, consume, and collapse, and all the while, the chaos isn't merely out there, it is within. Epictetus lived under the shadow of the Roman Empire, born a slave, crippled in body, yet freer in mind than most emperors. He did not seek freedom by bending the world to his will. He gained it by aligning his will with reason. In a world of modern noise, his ancient clarity becomes a weapon, not of attack, but of defense. It carves through delusion and hands the individual a mirror. What disturbs you is not the thing itself, but your opinion about it. The crowd panics when the market crashes. The Stoic checks whether he truly owns anything worth fearing to lose. A delay in a plan, a rejection from a lover, a comment on the internet, these become unbearable when one forgets that judgment, not the event, causes suffering. Mental self-discipline begins here. The first line of defense is not resistance, but discernment. Before reacting, pause. Is this under my control or not? This quiet question dissolves half of life's agonies, for what is not within your control is not your concern. It belongs to fortune, not to you. What you do control, your reason, your choice, your attitude, this is the citadel that no army can breach. And yet, you're not made of stone. The modern world will provoke you. It will feed you with comparisons, stir your desires, promise you endless options, and then punish you for choosing. It will whisper that happiness lies in having more success, more admiration, more things. And when you chase them, it will remind you of your inadequacy. Epictetus warned that those who attach themselves to externals become hostages to fate. He did not advocate withdrawal from life, but detachment from outcome. To act with discipline, pursue with virtue, and accept the results, whatever they may be. Like an archer who releases the arrow with skill, but does not demand the bullseye. This detachment is not apathy, it is clarity, the ability to act fully without being broken by the result. In modern terms, it is showing up to do the work without obsessing over the likes, the metrics, the promotions. These are externals, and externals are borrowed things. They belong to the world, not to you. You cannot control whether a storm will arrive tomorrow, but you can control whether you have trained to endure it. That is how the Stoic sees hardship, not as injustice, but as preparation. Difficulties are things that show what men are, Epictetus wrote. Like the gymnasium of the ancient athletes, hardship is the training ground for the soul. Every misfortune is an invitation to strengthen the inner fiber, not by complaining, but by asking, what part of me can this strengthen? You are not made weaker by what you endure, only by how you interpret it. And what of the inner storms, the anxious spirals, the endless what-ifs? Overthinking is not a sign of intelligence, but of undisciplined judgment. The mind that speculates endlessly does not live, it drowns. Logic, then, becomes the lifeline. If you fear that something might happen, ask yourself, has it happened yet? If not, you suffer from imagination, not reality. If it has happened, then ask, is this something I can influence? If so, act. If not, accept. This is the path to serenity, not through certainty, but through reasoned clarity. To survive modern chaos is not to fight every fire, but to cease setting them within. The Stoic does not react to insult, praise, or failure the way the crowd does. Why? Because he knows. A man is not harmed by being called a fool unless he consents to believe it. There is a freedom deeper than politics, deeper than wealth. It is the freedom to govern yourself, and only reason can be its king.
A man enters a room and is greeted with silence. His mind begins to speak. They must be judging me. I must have done something wrong. Hours pass, and the thought lingers. He replays, rewinds, rewrites. A glance becomes an insult. A pause becomes rejection. This is how the modern mind often works, not on facts, but on interpretation. Epictetus would see it differently. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. So many suffer not from the world, but from their own commentary on it. To break this pattern, one must become a guardian of thought. When an event occurs, before emotion, before reaction, one must ask, what is the true nature of this event? Not what does it feel like or what might it mean, but what is it exactly? Someone cut in front of you on the road. Is it an attack on your dignity or simply a car changing lanes? The answer determines your emotional state, not the action itself. The Stoic creates space between event and judgment. This space is the seat of freedom. It is where the reasoning mind reigns, where a person chooses how to respond rather than be dragged like a slave behind every emotional impulse. To practice this is not to become cold, it is to become deliberate. Fire burns, but it does not choose. A Stoic does. Modern life pushes reaction. Click now, buy now, reply now. But the Stoic resists the pace. He delays judgment until it has earned its place. He examines impressions the way a banker inspects coins, holding them to the light of reason to see if they are genuine or counterfeit. Detachment, then, is not abandonment. It is the refusal to let temporary storms drown permanent values. If a relationship ends, does that erase your capacity for virtue? If a job is lost, has your ability to think clearly been taken from you? These questions are not meant to numb, but to recenter. They redirect your gaze inward, toward what is always yours. Epictetus taught that you are an actor in a play written by another. You do not choose the role, but you choose how to perform it. Whether the part is long or short, noble or common, what matters is not the script, but your performance. Modern minds rebel against this, craving control over every detail, but Stoicism whispers a calmer truth. Fate brings the wind. You must raise the sail. This is amor fati, not merely accepting fate, but loving it, not in resignation, but in alignment. You do not wish for events to go as you will, but for your will to go as events do. When illness comes, when delays arise, when disappointment strikes, the Stoic does not resist the moment, but seeks the virtue it calls forth. This is where hardship transforms. No longer the enemy, it becomes the forge. The fire that purifies the soul, burning away dependence on outcomes. The Stoic does not hope for ease, but prepares for difficulty, like a boxer who trains for blows, not applause. What tests you strengthens you, if you do not curse it, but meet it with reason. This mindset is rare in a world that worships comfort, but comfort is not growth, and growth, real, durable moral growth, requires discomfort. Epictetus told his students, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. Imagine waking to this idea daily, that nothing needs to be different for you to begin the work of virtue. And that includes your thoughts. The overthinking mind believes it must solve everything, control everything, prepare for everything. But the Stoic knows the mind is a tool, not a tyrant. and it must be trained. When thoughts spiral, pause, ask, is this useful? Is this under my control? If not, let it go. If so, act. Then let go of the result. This is the discipline that builds unshakable calm, not by controlling the world, but by controlling your response to it. For the modern world, full of noise and temptation, the Stoic brings the stillness of clarity and reminds you that no storm can sink a mind that refuses to let in the water.
A man once asked Epictetus how to remain calm when insulted. Epictetus replied, "If someone calls you a donkey, consider whether you are. If you are not, ignore it. If you are, thank him." This was not sarcasm. It was a blade of truth, cutting clean through ego. In today's world, where offense is currency and identity is fragile, this kind of clarity seems almost alien. People spend hours justifying themselves, defending reputations, chasing validation. But the Stoic sees through the trap. You are not what people say about you. You are what you consistently choose, regardless of what they say. Modern chaos often begins in the need to be seen, heard, liked. But the Stoic doesn't need to be validated. He needs only to be aligned with reason, with nature, with virtue. This is why reputation, praise, and criticism become irrelevant. Not because the Stoic is arrogant, but because he has recentered his identity. He no longer places it in things that can be taken. They call you incompetent? You examine yourself. Is it true? If yes, improve. If no, move on. Either way, you remain free. The person who reacts with rage, shame, or anxiety is still a hostage to words, to perception, to their own wounded pride. But imagine being insulted and not even blinking, not because you're numb, but because you've trained your soul to care only for what matters, your integrity, your rationality, your choices. That is the freedom Epictetus offered. Inner freedom. A freedom not dependent on outcome, opinion, or possession. He taught that the real chains are mental, and the key is in your hands, every day, every moment, if you're willing to use it. But this freedom is not gained cheaply. It requires training, not of the body, but of the will. And that training happens in the smallest moments. When you resist the urge to reply immediately to a slight, when you choose silence over pointless argument, when you begin the day with discipline instead of delay, when you face a failure and don't crumble. These are the weight sets of the soul, invisible to the world, but unmistakable in their effect. Epictetus warned against the softness of comfort. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. The modern mind cannot bear this, but the Stoic embraces it. For what greater power than to be unmoved by others' misunderstanding? Think of the chaos around you, constant comparison, never-ending news, fleeting pleasures, compulsive distractions. Now imagine standing within it like a rock in the ocean. The waves crash, but you remain, because you know the truth of who you are and what you serve. Not impulse, not fashion, not fear, but reason. Always reason. And reason teaches that no insult wounds unless it finds a wound already open. No chaos enters unless a door is left ajar. To survive modern chaos is not to escape it. It is to walk within it, unshaken. To move from reaction to reflection, from noise to discernment. When you feel pulled, ask, what am I really chasing? When you feel offended, ask, what part of me is being threatened? When you feel anxious, ask, have I truly lost control? or just the illusion of it? These questions don't just calm, they transform. They reorient you toward the one thing that is always yours, your capacity to think rightly. And in a world that demands everything, your time, your attention, your identity, to claim ownership over your own mind is the most radical act of all. This is not a tactic, it is a way of being. A posture of the soul that says, I do not belong to chance. I do not belong to others. I belong to virtue, and no one can take that from me.
Walk through any city today and you'll see it. Faces illuminated by glass rectangles, eyes darting from one feed to the next. Attention is currency, and most people are bankrupt. Their thoughts are not their own. Their emotions rise and fall with the timeline. One headline ruins the morning. One comment shatters their calm. This is not freedom. This is slavery, not to chains, but to impulses. Epictetus warned of this long before such devices existed. He knew that anything which governs your peace owns your life. No man is free, he said, who is not master of himself. And the mastery begins with awareness of what captures your mind, what stirs your emotions, what breaks your rhythm. In modern chaos, distraction is not just a nuisance, it is a form of self-abandonment. When you cannot hold your own mind still, you become a stranger to yourself. The Stoic knows this and guards his focus like treasure. For every moment of attention is an act of investment into virtue or into vanity. What would it look like to reclaim that focus? Not in grand gestures, but in small acts of refusal. To check the phone one more time, to feed the outrage, to chase the argument, to indulge the fantasy. Instead, the Stoic returns, not to silence, but to stillness. A deep, grounded clarity, where the mind is not seduced by every possibility, but anchored in purpose. Purpose, that is the compass through chaos. Modern life offers endless options, but few directions. It tells you to be everything, do everything, feel everything. But Epictetus cuts through this. First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Without this clarity, every path leads nowhere. Every distraction becomes temptation. But when the soul is aimed, distractions lose their grip. The Stoic does not pursue many things. He pursues the right thing, and pursues it daily. And this pursuit must be practiced especially in hardship, when the plans fall apart, when people fail you, when fatigue sets in. Most ask, why is this happening to me? The Stoic asks, what can I become through this? This subtle shift is everything. It moves you from victim to participant, not in the chaos, but in the shaping of character. Life will challenge you. That is not optional. But whether that challenge becomes bitterness or strength, that is your choice. Consider how a blacksmith tempers iron, not with praise, but with flame and hammer. So too does life shape the soul, through friction. And Epictetus knew the person who escapes the hammer also escapes the strength it creates. So the Stoic trains, not for perfection, but for resilience. To fall and rise rightly. To lose and respond with clarity. To be wronged and remain just.
And in this training, he lets go of the need for control, not out of defeat, but out of wisdom. Control is a myth when it reaches beyond the self. You cannot command others. You cannot rewrite the past. And you cannot force outcomes. But you can govern your thoughts. Choose your response. And stand firm in your values. This is not weakness. This is the highest strength. Modern chaos seduces people into reacting, loudly, instantly, emotionally. But the Stoic knows silence can be power. Delay can be discipline. Restraint can be victory. He does not need to win every battle because his goal is not to dominate, but to remain undisturbed. Not in the sense of apathy, but in the sense of inner sovereignty. The ability to act from principle, not provocation. In this way, the Stoic becomes untouchable. Not because life stops attacking, but because his peace no longer depends on life's behavior.
There is a kind of silence that feels like defeat, a silence born from suppression, resignation, or fear. But there is another kind, a silence that radiates strength, not because it lacks the words, but because it no longer needs them. Epictetus embodied this second silence. He knew that true power does not shout, it endures. And in a world where everyone competes to be heard, where opinions fly like arrows, endurance becomes rare. It becomes revolutionary. So, what does it mean to endure like a Stoic? It means not letting praise intoxicate you, nor criticism wound you. It means waking each day with the same clarity, whether the world applauds you or forgets your name, because your worth was never theirs to measure. This is the final anchor of Stoic survival in modern chaos, a commitment to inner integrity, regardless of outer circumstances. Epictetus reminded his students that the role of philosophy is not to make life easy, but to make people unbreakable. And unbreakable people are forged only through confrontation, with illusion, with fear, with themselves. To practice Stoicism is not to hide from life's noise, but to walk straight into it, carrying with you a quiet certainty. That certainty says, you do not need everyone to agree. You need only to act in alignment with truth. You do not need to predict tomorrow. You need only to respond with discipline to what arrives. You do not need to escape suffering. You need only to meet it with reason and refuse to be made small by it. And in this practice, a strange freedom emerges, the kind that no algorithm, no trend, no external force can touch, the kind that allows you to live fully in the present without being pulled by regret or fear. For the Stoic, every moment is a test, but not of outcomes, a test of character. The line is drawn daily between who you are and who you are tempted to become. And in that space, something remarkable happens. Chaos loses its grip, not because the world calms down, but because you do. You begin to recognize the pattern, that what used to disturb you, rejection, delay, insult, failure, now becomes material. Material to practice patience, material to strengthen endurance, material to live as Epictetus taught, in accordance with nature. And nature's law is not comfort, it is development. So you stop wishing for ease, you stop chasing perfect conditions, you stop bargaining with life. You rise, you act, you accept. amor fati. Not just as a phrase, but as a rhythm of being. To love what happens not for what it gives you, but for what it demands from you. Modern chaos tries to keep you scattered, passive, reactive. Stoicism returns you to the center, deliberate, aware, and above all, sovereign. You are not just surviving the noise, you are using it, shaping yourself in the fire of each day, refining your attention, training your choices, honoring what Epictetus believed to be the only true possession, the will aligned with reason. And when you live this way, chaos becomes what it always was, a test, not a sentence, an opportunity, not a threat. You do not need a perfect world to be at peace. You need only to govern your own mind. The rest, as Epictetus said, is not up to you, and therefore not your concern.